There have been a whole boatload of new ham HTs released so far in 2025. In this video, we'll take a look at the Baofeng UV32 with Bluetooth programming and GPS. This video will be the first in a multi-part series where we'll take a look at the UV32 radios. In part 2, we'll look at the UV32 programming options and GPS. And in part 3, we'll take a look at the DM32 DMR version of this radio. In the last part, we'll do a side-by-side comparison to help you decide whether the DM32's slightly extra cost might be worth the expense. While I occasionally get to review radios vendors send me, I purchased both of these radios using funds generated by the channel. Speaking of that, please like and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel if you haven't already. There's a join button below the video where you can learn about becoming a channel member and a thanks button to make a one-time contribution. Thanks for your consideration. Let's start by looking at a couple of key features. The UV32 has some very interesting design features that are almost immediately noticeable. First, its large size. While not as big as the UV25, it's certainly bigger than several of the newer Baofeng models, such as the UV21 and somewhat older UV17. Next, there are a couple of things that appear backwards. You'll notice the charging tabs for the desktop charger are in the front and the speaker is in the back. These two design features are factors in the radio's larger size. The battery has an L shape and the radio body sits on the top of it. This allows the battery to only go up about 2/3 of the way up the back. This leaves plenty of room for a much larger rear-firing speaker. The specs refer to it as a 40mm size speaker. Despite it facing backwards, the speaker is easy to hear even at the lowest volume settings. Back to the battery. The UV32 has a 2200 milliamp hour battery that's labeled in watt-hours. That seems to be the new thing with airlines measuring battery capacity in watt-hours now. That number is 16.28. Oh, and watch out for the mounting screw. It'll fall out if you're not careful. The radio also has Bluetooth capability that allows you to use the Radio Frequency Programmer app on your phone. I had to ask the vendor for a link to the app. It wasn't in the Play Store for my Android phone. The radio's description talks about APRS capability, and that might be a future development, but it isn't included as of now. It does have GPS, though. I found that even in my house, my UV32 locked onto the GPS satellites promptly. I got this version for about $50 with a couple of extra accessories. That's about $12 more than the basic radio on Amazon. I'll leave some affiliate links below. Let's take a look at what came with this set. So here's the box that the UV32 comes in. Let's take a look at what's inside. So here's the owner's manual for the UV32. It's not labeled, which is interesting, but it describes what the controls are. One of my gripes about Baofeng manuals is that they just use such tiny type. And as I get older, even with my glasses, I find it hard to read sometimes. But all the important things are here, important tips, transportation, battery charging information. It gives you some diagrams and so forth. And so this is pretty typical. Here are some of the icons that are on the radio screen. And then if we look through these, the menus are explained as well as some descriptions of some of the processes that you have available to you. And so it's a typical Baofeng owner's manual, and not bad, but not great. So that's the owner's manual. Now, in terms of recharging or charging the radio, there's a couple of ways you can do it. One, we have got this wall wart with a wired USB-C on it. The USB-C plugs into the back of this desktop charger. If you like desktop chargers, you've got one here. This one is a little different, as we'll see in a minute, because the battery tabs for charging are on the front of the radio, not the back. You can see in here that the charge points in the desktop charger then are also on the front. The other thing that comes with the radio is a USB-C cable. It's got an A on one side, a C on the other, and this one can be used from any USB-C power source, such as a phone charger, power bank, or just another wall wart, and goes into the battery itself. So that's charging for the UV32. UV32 also comes with a K-connector style wired earpiece and push to talk. So if you want to use the radio a little bit more surreptitiously, or as we'll see in a minute, because the radio is a little bit larger than the typical small HT for hams, you could plug this into your radio, leave it connected to your belt, and then be able to listen and talk on the radio without dragging the beast out of what we'll look at next. And that is, unlike other radios that have a little belt clip, the UV32 has a little pouch. You can connect the pouch to your belt here, pack strap, or any other thing you want to connect it to. It's got a snap on the back. And then you can then open it up, and it's got a little elastic sides where you can place the radio, and then this elastic band here at the top will go over the top of the radio, and you can keep it secure there on your belt or whatever else you're mounting the radio to. As always, the radio comes with an antenna. It's got the socket or female side here. It's got a pretty stiff base, and the antenna itself's got a little bit of flexibility, but not as much as you might expect. The kit also came with this little antenna. It's a 2 meter and 70 centimeter antenna, dual band. It's stiff, so it'll bend, so it's kind of a gooseneck style antenna. And then the receiving part of the antenna is in this flat plate here at the top. Now the radio itself is powered by this lithium-ion battery. It says it's for the UV32. It's got an 8.4 volts. That's the charge limit, so it's, basically a 2-cell LiPo. And it is 16.28 watt hours at 7.4 volts. You can do the arithmetic to compute the overall capacity. One of the things I'm noticing, especially since some of these devices, might want to fly with them and that kind of thing, is the TSA uses watt hours, and I'm starting to see some of the capacities starting to list watt hours instead of milliamp hours on these batteries, and that's the case with this as well. Now, the other thing you're going to want to note is that the battery screws into the bottom of the radio, and conveniently it comes with a little screwdriver. So let's mount the battery to the radio before we continue the tour. So now we've got the battery mounted to the radio, and I noticed when I looked at the little sticker, it's got its FCC ID in there, so all that's fine. One of the things I think is really cool is down here. This is the charge port for the battery. Instead of having a little LED on one side or the other, this one, the LED surrounds the port, and so it'll glow red or green depending upon the charge status, which is, I think, kind of cute. Anyway, let's start at the front of the radio. We see we got the screen cover on from shipping. Let's see if we can get that off. Here we go. Got that little clear cellophane off there. And we've got the basic radio here, and you can see from the size of my hand, it's bigger than the typical radio, and then the aspect ratio is off a little too, so it's narrower but it's taller, and so that's kind of cool. We've got the screen, we've got the menu and back button, we've got P1 and P2, we've got up and down, so this is a 4-way rocker switch. The numbers here have letters on them, which will lead me to believe that we can enter names in some of the variables here for this radio from the keypad, not just from a CPS. And then down here at the bottom, of course, is the bottom of the battery with those little charge pads that I mentioned to you earlier. As we rotate the radio, we see we've got the push to talk, side key 1, side key 2. We've looked at the back already. Got speaker back here, which is kind of unique. That little LED I mentioned a second ago. And then over here, we've got the typical fold back little rubber cover for the K1 connector for charging or for a speaker mic, or that little attachment that I showed you a minute ago. Let's take a quick peek at the top. So here there's quite a bit of stuff on the radio. We've got the SMA connector. It's the plug or male side here on the radio. We've got a little LED for transmit receive status right there. We've got the on off switch right here, and then we've got channel right here. which allows us to do some menu selecting. We can change channels and do some other things. And so that's one of the indicators of, a slightly elevated radio. Many of the budget class radios don't have this extra knob, and that knob gives us just a bit more control over things. So that's a quick overview and power off tour of the UV32. Now, let's do a power on tour. So let's do a quick power on tour of the UV32. We'll turn it on. I'm going to tip the radio up and see if there's any welcoming message.
Channel mode.
So there we go. It came on with a male voice that said it was in channel mode. So here we have the screen. We can see that right here that we've got, this is main. It's got a little word main right up here at the top. And it's got the power setting is on high. It's on wide. This is how it comes out of the box. And so I haven't done any programming. You see it's on channel 13 and on zone 1. This is the A register. This is the B register. And it's got a little RSSI there at the bottom. By pressing this button here, the little green home, you can see that now number A is smaller and muted, and then number B now says main, and it's a different, well, it shows the same frequency, but just because that's what we had, if we make a change to the frequency, we can see that we're doing those changes down here, and that's what would transmit if we were to do the push to talk. So we'll move up to that upper register again here in the dual mode. And then we can also see that we can go up and down here,
13,
or we can change here
14, 13.
for channels here, or here. And then with P1, don't see that we've got really anything happening there. And then you can see here at the bottom, that little blue band, it's got some fairly small type. It says M or V, which is memory or VFO. And so this one up here is in channel mode. If we do a long press on this, that will change that to frequency mode up there. Go back to a channel mode, long press. So the AB buttons, memory, VFO buttons, they're all missing here because these buttons are doing double duty. So let's take a quick look at the menu. As with many of the newer releases of radios, the menu is subdivided into various categories. And so this is bank or zones. If we go in here, you can see what zone you have selected. In this case, we've got zone 1. We can go look in there, and then we can add zones. Generally, that's easier to do in the CPS. And as I said, I haven't done any programming to this radio yet. So let's go down. We got scan. We can set various scan modes with the frequency range we want to scan, the mode we want to scan, as carrier ops, time ops, or scan end. We can scan for subcodes or CT/CSS codes and so forth. We can go down into our Bluetooth, which this radio has. We can turn it on or off. So we'll turn it on. We return out of the menu. You may want to leave Bluetooth off if you're not planning to use it. It's just one more draw on the battery. But on and off is the only choice you have there in Bluetooth. We've got radio settings. These are the things you're used to seeing. You know, the step choice, squelch, power, save, Vox, all that kind of thing. We'll go up here. We can see that we've got 27 menus there to include the PTT delay, alerts, PTT ID. I want to look at this one briefly. This one you can set to when it transmits the ID at the beginning of the transmission, end of transmission, or both. We're going to leave it off for now. And when we get up here to A and I edit, these are some of the things that we can do when we've got the GPS on. And so we can go into A and I edit, and we can give the radio a number just by typing it in. Continue on up, alarm tone, dual watch, whether we want both of those displays on or not, how long you want the backlight on. I've got it set right now to always on so it doesn't keep flashing on us when we're recording. And these others here are things you're used to seeing. Now, if we go down here to GNSS, we'll go in here and we can see that we can turn it on or off. We'll do that. Let's turn it on. I'm not sure it'll pick up a signal in the house. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but you have to have it on for it to work. Set the time zone. In this case, I'm in time zone -7 from Greenwich Mean Time, or UTC. So I'm going to select that to tell the GPS receiver where it is in terms of time. And then GPS mode, we can go here and we can do the GPS and BDS, BDS, or GPS only. So I'll select the GPS. Take a look there. Yes, that's what I've got. So we'll back out of this. And then they've got a menu for programming channels. And I find these really handy because you can go through here and get all the things you need to program a radio channel from the faceplate of the radio without having to skip through, 70 items. You can just go back to the program menu and you can work your way down to get the information into the radio it needs to work on that channel the way you want that channel to work, to include the CT, CSS, or DCS codes for both transmit, receive, signaling. The signaling choices are here. We can do our multifunction display for the channel, and you can put the name, the frequency, or just the channel as I've shown you already. This will be the one that comes up with primary. We can mute the speaker, add to our scan list, and all of the things that you're used to doing. So we're back out of this, and then we can go into radio info, and this gives us the information about our radio. So we put in that ANI edit 111. Here you see radio 111. Firmware is version 0.3 and the hardware is version 1.0. And so now we're back at the top and we've gone through all of these menus. Now, if I go over here to P2, you can see that I can find my place. And this time it comes on when I press P2 because I've turned the GPS system on. It's not showing anything right now because it doesn't have a lock. But if we go up and down, we can go through the various items. So here's code 101, 102, 103, 104, and so forth. But the radio that you have has to have an ID in that ANI edit. I had put in 111, and so if we get to 111, it'll show that. And that's going to be important when we broadcast our GPS position or when we request GPS position from another radio that we're using the same GPS scheme that Baofeng uses. And so we can go back and do that. Generally, since I'm usually the one here on the first one, you can see there's not a 000. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to leave this. I'm going to go into menu, and I'm going to go down to radio settings. I'm going to go up this time since ANI edit is near the bottom. Enter, and I want to do 101.
101.
I'm good, so I'm going to hit OK. And now, back out of this. And then now if I go into menu and go down to program radio info is what I'm looking for, you can see my radio code now is 101. And so those are the numbers going to be important to you when you're using the GPS and GPS sharing information. So that's a quick power on tour of the UV32. If you're used to some of these more recent Baofeng radios, you're going to see that the menu system works pretty nice. One of the things that budget class Baofeng radios often come up short on is signal purity. The UV32 is better than some, but still had an out-of-limit spur. Let's take a look. So we've got the UV32 here connected to my Tiny SA Ultra. I've got it set up to record harmonics, so you can see the vertical lines. The horizontal line is minus 16.02, which represents 25 microwatts. And if we have any harmonics, will probably fall in these vertical columns that are displayed here on the screen because I'm measuring harmonics. So I've got the power set to medium. Since it's a 10-watt radio, I've got 40 decibels of attenuation up here to both of those things to avoid damaging my Tiny SA Ultra. and we'll just give it a press here and see what kind of signal purity we've got. And we've got 2 climbing, which is not good, at least not what we'd hope to see. We'll let this go through and stabilize a little bit. And so as you can see, the second harmonic is just a few dB below the primary, but there aren't any others, which is interesting. Some of the sister radios to this model, I've seen multiple harmonics. This is not as bad as some of those, but this second harmonic here, labeled number 2, is certainly problematic for those of you who care about the clean signal aspects of your radio. One of the things I found a bit odd is that the information on the sales pages for this radio didn't mention that it's not only a tri-power radio, it's also a tri-band radio. As we'll see in this power output test, it has pretty good output on the 1.25 meter band too. So I've got the radio hooked up to my MFJ 874. Because this is a high power radio, I've got the range at the 20 watt you'll see on that little knob on the top right. So we'll be reading the output on the second arc from the bottom. So we'll work through VHF, UHF, and 220. So this is high power on VHF. Looks like about 9.9. Can't hardly beat that with a stick with a 10 watt radio. So UHF on high power. Right at 8 watts. Now let's go to 220. High power and 220. 220 is always a little bit lower, it seems, with these budget class radios. This one is 2, but still it's about 6.1, right at 6.1 watts. Let's wrap this up with a couple of closing comments. First, I like this radio. While I'm a bit partial to small form factor radios, this larger radio has a solid feel and fits nicely in my hand. The included pouch instead of a belt clip is also a plus. I also like the large screen and font selections, along with the ability to choose how your channels are displayed. Speaking of channels, I also like the subdivision in the menu for easy channel programming on the radio faceplate. Additionally, channel zones and app programming are a helpful feature. Last, I'm also a fan of the tan color I got. On the negative side, the spur in the 292 MHz range is a problem if signal purity is a big deal to you. With all the repeaters in the 70 centimeter band, limiting your 2 meter use is one mitigation strategy. As I mentioned earlier, this is one of 3 videos on this radio series. Look for a playlist over here and for past video on using the GPS. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. Thanks for watching, and 73.